Greetings and welcome to the Southside Help Center show. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in, and this is going to be an absolutely wonderful show. If you have any questions, do remember that this is a live call-in show. You can give us a call here at the station. Our number here, 312-738-1060, 312-738-1060 if you have any questions about the programs that we're going to be talking about. Just want to make sure we say thank you to everybody who participated in our back to school event. Hopefully everyone was able to get some of what they needed for back to school. We had a lot of bags. We gave out hundreds of book bags, which was absolutely, it was an overwhelming turnout, and we really appreciate the community because we were able to do that, and you guys were able to come out and fully support that event. So we thank you for supporting the back to school event, and we were able to give out hundreds of books bags, and that was absolutely a marvelous event. So we thank you for that. We got some other things that'll be upcoming, and as over the next few weeks we'll be able to bring those things to you. This is the Southside Help Center show, and this is we're going to be talking about the Southside Help Center MSM programs, and that's young men who have sex with men. And I have Mr. Charles Nelson, who will be my guest today. So if you have any questions, you can always call in. We're going to explain to you exactly what that program is, but let's make sure that we cover some Southside Help Center business. Southside Help Center was founded in 1987 by Miss Betty Smith, who is our founder and former executive director. It is now headed by Miss Vanessa Smith, who is our executive director of the Southside Help Center, and is doing an absolutely wonderful job. We've been providing HIV prevention and education since 1987, but we do offer a holistic approach to services. So we have a number of different programs that we'd like to present to you. Over the past few weeks, we've talked about our youth program, youth self-enhancement, violence prevention. We also talked about HIV prevention. We are definitely an HIV prevention service provider. We provide HIV counseling and testing on a regular basis. We come out and provide HIV counseling and testing. We also distribute condoms. We're part of the condom distribution program with the city of Chicago. So if you need condoms, you can always give us a call. Come by the agency. If you would like to be a distributor of some of those condoms, give me a call. That number at the office is 773-445-5445, extension 17, and I can get you that information. We've also talked about programs like our mental health counseling programs, or our counseling programs just surrounded HIV positive people. We have a number of different programs that we offer. So if you know someone who is HIV positive and would like to be get into counseling and treatment, give us a call. Also, we talked a little bit about make sure I cover everything. We talk about our CEBA program, which is capacity building. If you're a CBO, a community-based organization, and you need some assistance with program implementation or training, give us a call. We have a CEBA program, and we'll go across the country. It's not just confined to the state of Illinois, but it goes across the country, and talk about what they can do to make sure that the community-based agencies have all the information that they need and that they're getting out the good information. So that's another one of the programs that we've been able to talk about in the past. So we have a number of different programs. Today we want to highlight our YMSM program, and that's why we got Mr. Nelson here. I'm not going to keep on talking. Make sure we did all of that first. So now first thing I want to ask Mr. Nelson, one is, what do you do at the Southside Help Center? That's the first thing.
Well, first, because we give a thanks to the community, I want to thank everyone, since we're talking about the Young Men Who Have Sex with Men program. I want to thank everyone who was out this past Sunday helping in support of an event that we did for the young men community, which was Love Fest. Everyone that came out, hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about it, want to know any more information, please ask me. What I do at Southside Help Center, I am the director of MSM programs and projects. I've been at Southside for over 10 years now. Our projects cover the basis of education, prevention education, testing, prevention counseling, and workshops that we do to help young men and men who are over the age of 24 change behaviors where they don't put themselves at risk.
Okay. And remember, we're talking about HIV prevention and risk. It's not who you are, but what you do that's putting you at risk. And we have to make sure that people keep that up front. It's not who you are, but what you do that put you at risk. So it's very important that people be mindful of behavior, because behavior is what's putting people at risk. One of the things I want to make sure that we cover, because you talk about young MSM programs, but you don't just deal with young men. You also deal with, this program is not directly related, but I noticed that you do deal with young women as well. So just briefly talk about that, and if they needed to or needed a place to or wanted to talk, who would they call?
Well, they can definitely call our office. We have a satellite office in Hyde Park, and we work with women who have sex with women, and we also have women who might have sex with the young men or adult men who have sex with men also. And they can call our number, which is 773-701-4246.
Okay. Now there's some acronyms, and I want to make sure that we get covered with the acronym because the acronyms directly related to individuals who may have these particular questions. We want to talk about what the YMSM is, talk about what that program is.
Yeah.
We want to talk about the LGBTQ, what that is, and we want to explain those so that people who may be experiencing or having different issues or concerns about sexuality, what they need to do. So let's talk. Let's make sure we cover those acronyms first because it definitely leads right into what we need to talk about as far as people who need these services.
Definitely. YMSM stands for Young Men Who Have Sex with Men. It's a term that was created by the Centers of Disease for men who don't want to identify whether they're gay, bi, trans, questioning. That's what it's for. It's a term so that we won't identify them, allow them the chance to identify themselves, but we're identifying the behavior that they are men who have sex with men.
Okay. And we want to make sure, because for so long, oftentimes when you start talking about different issues, when you start identifying as gay, identifying as homosexual, what have you, people need to understand the difference in what that means in terms of behavior, because you do have a lot of men who may not identify as gay, who may not consider themselves to be such, but when you start talking about the behavior, and the reason I'm saying this is because you got a lot of guys who may be in prison, who may deal with sex on a survival level, what they consider to be survival sex, but they do not identify as gay. So we don't want people to think that because it's not specific that you cannot identify with some of the programs that we're talking about here.
Oh, most definitely. We work with men who have sex with men, no matter how they identify themselves, Mr. Cherry. And when it comes to the term of whether you are gay or bi, those are really political terms.
Okay.
It's about how someone politically identify themselves with a community. A lot of men, especially in our community, African American community and other communities of color, may not really identify with that political stance of being someone who wants to identify as being gay.
Absolutely. And also the download, we got to make sure we cover that when we start talking about MSM projects and so forth. What that means.
Have to.
We must. It's a must because we want to understand. We want you to understand. We do offer a holistic approach to HIV prevention, target populations. And here's the other thing: how are these populations identified? Who's doing the identifying? When you start talking about MSM, IDU, YMSM, who's doing the identifying when you start talking about who's at most risk?
Well, the Centers of Disease identify people by their behaviors and by who their sexual partners are. And so that's how they're identified. And if they give us additional information of how they self-identify, then we use that information also.
Okay, because I know that for a while I've sat on the PCPG, which is the Prevention Planning Committee, and it talks about who's at most risk. And remember, we're talking about HIV programming, and that's what we do at the Southside Health Center. We try to reduce the number of risks of individuals coming infected with HIV. It's very important that people understand what we do at the Southside Health Center, among other things, because we do have other programs. But today we're talking about our YMSM program and how this can benefit you. If you want to make any if you want to have any questions, give us a call here at the station. That number is 312-738-1060, and it's a live call-in show if you want to ask Charles any questions about the programs that he served. But I just want to make sure that we're covering as much as we can when we start talking about behavior. We start talking about HIV. We start talking about the process and how people are identified, because I do know that with the PCBG, the Cities Planning Committee, what they do is they look at a group of people who've become infected, and then that's how they make determinations as to which risk groups or how people are identified in terms of risk. We want to make sure. Go ahead. You want to chime in?
No, I was just going to chime in and say definitely they identify population by their risk behaviors. And although there's a lot of information out there about in the African American community or in the United States what populations are most at risk, when you look at the numbers of populations that's highest at risk, which is the project I work for, they're definitely for young men who have sex with men. They're the highest risk because the numbers of constant men testing positive is constantly increasing, even in this day of a lot of information and prevention that's out there.
Let me ask you, in your experience, Charles, why do you think that number is steady rising? With all the information that we have, as long as we've been dealing with HIV, why do you think that number is still rising?
Well, first you got to look at the big the big pie, the
Okay.
big picture. In the African American community as a whole, there has been a lot of information that was not delivered to our community for a lot of years. And when HIV first was identified as something that was a virus that was in our community in the United States, it was identified as a white gay disease. So that meant that a lot of African Americans felt that they weren't at risk. And then, of course, African American men who have sex with men don't see themselves as white gay men either, so they don't see themselves at risk.
Gotcha. Go ahead.
And so as time goes on, we are now 25 to almost 30 years into this epidemic. We're way behind the learning curve. So we're just catching up with the education, and that's why there's such a big emphasis to target the African American community, and definitely the numbers of men who have sex with men, to make sure that they get the information also about how to protect themselves and about prevention and where the risks are. A lot of men who may not identify as gay still put themselves at risk because they don't feel that they're having risky sex.
And it makes a lot of sense. And we've been talking about HIV prevention and education for a lot of years, and we often wonder why those numbers are still going up. And we are behind the learning curve because for so many years, so many people did not identify with behavior, and that's why we want to make sure that we're not identifying to make sure that people understand. We're not talking about white gay men, black gay men. We're talking about the behaviors that are putting people at risk. And we're targeting a particular population because we want to, we're constantly trying to develop new and innovative ways to get this information out there and to make sure that it sticks, because there are a lot of people who are still practicing risky behaviors and where they're dealing with a number of different partners, where they're dealing with unprotected sex. All of these different things are very important that we look at the behavior, look at what we can do to change that number and reduce the risk of HIV. We got a caller. Caller, you on the air?
Yes, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
All right. Yeah, I wanted to say a lot of young gay males, the reason why their crime rate is so high, because a lot of them don't take action about what's going on. You know what I'm saying? They get caught up into the moment, and they're not really thinking about it. They think about their little quick, you know what I'm saying? You know what? And they're not really thinking about what is the consequences of what's going to go on after, well. And then, see, a lot of them really, doesn't care because they don't have their family to turn to, or they don't have their family on their side. And so they just look at the love is doing sex. So, and by me being a gay male, I understand what you guys are saying and where it's coming from. And like I said, I have a lot of friends who are young and who are sick because they didn't think about what was, the actions that they took.
Let me ask you this while we got you on the line really quickly. What do you think is part of the solution, or something that you think that might help that you can say right now?
What do I think? I think that they need to have more, that they need to get into, more, I know enough they have a lot of activities for to get to it, but they need to spread it out throughout the community. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
Find something they can get into, because like I said, they're looking for love in the wrong place, and they're looking at it through sex, and that's not what's up.
So what we really need to do is start looking at alternative programs, which is what Charles' program is all about. It's all about alternative programming and making sure that they do. That people have some place to go where people can actually go and talk about sexuality when they can't talk to their family is very important when you talk about family a little bit for sure. Charles, we make sure you gotta cover family. Talk about family a little bit.
Well, first of all, let me start off by addressing what the young man just said. Definitely, prevention is the key to making sure that this epidemic in our community is resolved. Absolutely. If we don't have enough prevention out there, constantly prevention. I've been in this field since 1985, and I still stick by the theory that if you're consistent and you're constant in a community, you can stop this epidemic. And that means always having the same message. If you're going to have unprotected sex, if you're going to have anal sex, use a condom. If you're going to have vaginal sex, always use a condom. You won't put yourself at risk. But you're going to have to reach everyone. And a lot of times there are people who are going to slip through because we don't have enough programming for everyone. Southside has been around for a long time, and we're doing great work in the community, great work. But we need more money. We need more resources. We definitely need to have consistent programming that doesn't just bring a group of young men in and then send them through a workshop and say, bye, we'll talk to you later. We have to have something that's consistent, like the young man said, something that's always going on. I started years ago with a program called Brother to Brother, which was a every other week program. And out of all of those men that came through that program, who I promise you, tell me today that I saved their lives because they always had somewhere to go to talk to someone about, what was going on in their life, how they feel about love and relationships, and how they feel about identifying themselves, whether they identify as gay or not. Those kind of subjects. Because if you don't have that, they're constantly putting themselves at risk.
Absolutely. I totally agree. We need alternative programming. One of the things that I always talk about for our young people, and I'll talk about this across the board, is alternative programming, because the thing that we definitely need to provide them with is good, solid information. We need to talk about behavior change, but it's easy to say, but it's not easy to do. You got to look at the process, and that goes for heterosexual, homosexual, it doesn't matter. We start talking about procreation, we start talking about sexual responsibility. What does that mean? Right now today, we still don't want to talk about sex. Whenever we begin the process, people start talking about turning their head, turning their nose up. Every time we do it, we're doing it in the dark. It's so important that the lights be turned on the subject, and we not look at who you are, but what you're doing is putting you at risk. And we have to talk about sexual behavior, sexual responsibility. We have to talk to our young people young, because by the time they start participating in intercourse, you almost fighting a losing battle. So you have to get them early in the game when you start talking about programming, sexual responsibility, procreation. What does that mean? When we say that, oftentimes people, when the first time you done it, did you do it for that reason? And how often is that done? So we have to talk about that responsibility and who it's on.
Yes, and I definitely, Cherry, urge any mothers and fathers, grandparents, uncles and aunts out there, start talking to the youth today.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't start talking to them today and you wait until they're past the age of 13, they've already starting to have sex, and they've already been informed by people in their community about what they should do, and they're under peer pressure. It shouldn't matter what their sexual orientation is, because a lot of young men and women do not know what their sexual orientation is until they get much older. Even though they may run around with a crowd that may identify as being gay, they need support from their parents. They need support from their community. They need support from the churches that they go to. And this is where I feel that there's a lack of information that's giving out to our community, because the people who have always been the guidance in our community, the church, the mothers and fathers, even police officers, boys clubs, girl clubs, whatever, if they're not constantly informing the young people today about sex and how not to put themselves at risk they also help us, we're fighting a losing battle.
And I totally believe that that's the thing we need to talk a little bit more about, as well as talk about not just programming for our youth, but sensitivity and trainings for our adults. Because the one thing about parents of a child who is going through sexuality difficulties, if you don't know what to do, then more than likely you're going to do the wrong thing. And we love our children, and we want to make sure that we give them the support that they need when they're dealing with their sexuality. So it's so vital that we have more programming for parents as well, and parents take advantage of it, so that if you find yourself dealing with the sexuality concern with your children, you'll know what to do, how to do it, at least have an idea. And getting information about programming and sexuality workshops is vital. We can't say that enough.
Definitely vital. And if there are any parents out there that have questions and want support, please call Southside Help Center, ask for the MSM Project, and we can refer you to services where you can get that support.
Holistic approach to HIV prevention and education, as well as family. Southside Help Center, I must say that we have so many programs out there within the community. The community just needs to know that we're there. The community just needs to take advantage of these programming. And one of the things that we like to talk about at the center is when parents come in, and we all know what our problems are, but help us in identifying solutions.
Yes.
Help us becoming a solution to the problem, as opposed to being a part of the problem. When we start talking about sexuality, when we start talking about homosexuality or what have you, we definitely need to continue to holistically approach this topic and turn on some lights and talk about sex, talk about HIV prevention and education, and so forth. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes, I would like to just call and offer my support to you brothers.
Thank you.
I'm raising 2 girls, and my motto is to reach them and teach them before the streets do.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because
Absolutely.
if you don't, the streets will teach them, and then now you have a problem that you're climbing, you're fighting an uphill battle.
Yes, absolutely.
And the community itself, the black community itself has a little growing up to do, because our chickens are coming home to roost. As long as we put people in the gay community on the outskirts and not bring them in and love them and accept that this is a fact of life, that these are your children, and if you don't support them and you put them out in the streets, you're literally putting them out there to die, because they're gonna get it from another source, and normally the source out in the streets don't know what they're talking about anyway.
Absolutely. And that's
out here, but they're not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
getting the support.
That's why we continuously talk about programming and community awareness, and we thank you for calling in and talking about that, because so rare do we get parents to call in and talk about what needs to happen with our young people.
Yes.
And I always tell the story about this brother I ran into, and I told him that he needed to learn as much as he could about HIV and education. He told me that it was my job to teach his kid. Well, my response was, what if I never meet him? Mm-hmm. And whose responsibility is that? So as parents, we do have to get our kids young and talk about HIV prevention, education, sex, STDs. We need to talk about the risk and the responsibility before you become sexually active. And the one thing that I realized too, with most of our young people, they don't come to parents until after they've done something. But the thing is, Mr. Nelson, is planting the seed.
Yes.
Planting the seed. So hopefully if we plant the seed early enough and continue to cultivate that seed, once it grows, it blossoms and it blooms, and then it reaches those crossroads, it can make a good decision about sex, and that's the whole thing we're talking about. We're not talking about, it's like you say, you teach your kid to cross the street. I ain't teaching them to play in the street. I'm teaching them, if you come to the street, you can make a good decision about which way to go, whether I want to stop, go, or what have you. The same thing comes in when we start talking about sex, sexual responsibility. The seed has to be planted early. Plant the seed, cultivate the seed. You cultivate the seed, so that at that point when a child wants to become sexually active or sexually responsible, it has something to work with. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't plant the seed, I promise you, a seed will get planted.
Oh, yeah.
And how well will it be cultivated? You don't know. Yeah. That's why I value when parents get the right information, teach your children, cultivate your children, then you ain't got to worry. When I look at my children and I look at this child over here, and I say that kid don't know no better, because I don't know what he's been taught.
Right.
But when I look over here at my kid, I know if he knows better, because I know what I taught him.
Right.
And that's the same thing when we start talking about sex and sexual responsibility. It's about planting the seed. Not a seed of having sex, but a seed that if you make a decision, however you have sex, to have sex, plant the seed and cultivate it so that they can make a good decision. It's very important that we as parents get involved with our children, make sure that we continue to love them, give them guidance and so forth. Mr. Nelson, you want to?
Yeah, I want to also add, as we talk about what really is planting that seed, Mr. Cherry, that is the moment your child starts talking, you need to always have an open communication, very clear. Not baby talk, not goo-goo da-da. Talk to your child so they can learn to communicate with you openly. And this protects your child not only from growing up, putting itself at risk for HIV, but also putting itself at risk for being swayed into being gangs, putting itself at risk for sexual abuse by someone outside of your family or in your family. You have to communicate with your children so they can know that they can trust to come to you and always be honest with you, and because they know that they have a mother or father or someone in their family that they can always come to and get a straight answer, who's informed enough to talk to them about what's healthy for them.
Absolutely. We finna wrap it up real quick. I'd like to thank Mr. Charles Nelson for coming out and talking about the MSM programs. We truly would like to thank our tech, Mr. Ed, over there in the corner, Ed Moore. He's over there on the phones. We thank him as well. Until we see you again, the word for the week is cultivation. Peace.
Thank you.